All right, peace, everybody. I'm just doing this video to expose Islam once and for all. This right here will go in the record books, and this will be the nail in the coffin for the Islamic faith. After I finish this video, you will have no doubt that Islam is a false religion sent by the devil himself. And what prompted me to do this video, I watch YouTube religiously, and I look at debates and I weigh both sides, and I'm very objective about my viewpoints. So if someone has a valid point, I'll give them credit. But if they have an invalid point, I have to check them on it. So this is what I'm doing in this video. Now, without further ado, let's get in it. Let's jump right into it. Before you are three translations that are being shown. Now, one thing you have to know about Islam, the translators of Islam, they will always give you a false translation when they translate the Arabic into English. And the reason why they do this is because Muhammad, he said so many contradictory statements, and he made so many fallacies that the people who translate the Arabic, they realize it. And they understand that we live in a modern world where things can be checked, the science facts can be checked. So when they see that Muhammad made a mistake, or that the Quran made a mistake, they will try to clean it up. But in this particular verse that I'm about to show you, it's a pretty good translation. And we are reading from Quran.com. And let's use the Sahih International reference. The Sahih International translation. This is Sura 41:11. And I'm about to read it. Then he directed himself to the heaven while it was smoke, and said to it and to the earth, come into being, willingly or by compulsion. They said, we have come willingly. Now, did you guys catch it? Let me read it again. Then he directed himself to the heaven while it was smoke, and said to it and to the earth, come into being, willingly or by compulsion. They said, the key words, they said, we have come willingly. Now, what should stand out to you in this verse? Aha. They said. But that don't make sense. You know why? What do Muslims always tell you? That Allah existed alone by himself before creation. Now, this verse, Surah 41:11, is speaking about a time before creation, before the heavens were created. And most Muslim scholars will tell you that when it's talking about the earth in this time of creation, most Muslim scholars agree that it's talking about the elements of the earth when they were without form or shape. Not this round earth that we live on today, where you have the green grass and everything. This was the time before creation. This was the time when the heavens that we see were not formed yet. There were no planets. There were no stars. It was just Allah and these two souled beings that he was speaking to. Now, If you're like me, you probably used to Muslims always saying that only Allah exists outside of creation and there is nothing like Allah. But hold up. They can't say that anymore because Surah 41:11 disproves that, because it clearly says that Allah was speaking to two-souled beings. Now I'm just getting started. This is going to get real good. You have Allah speaking to two-souled beings. And why I say they have a soul? Because this smoke that Allah is speaking to, and this earth that he's speaking to, this earth without form or shape, it said, we have come willingly. Okay? Now, if you read the other translation, this is probably an even better one. The Pictol translation, it says, then turned he to the heaven when it was smoke and said unto it and unto the earth, come both of you willingly or loath. They said, we come obedient. Okay? And then in the Yusuf Ali translation, it also shows obedience. It says we come together in willing obedience. You see? So this proves that these two beings that Allah was speaking to were souled beings. They had a soul. And my proof is right there in the verse. Because only a soul is regulated to morality. Willingness and obedience, those are things that are understood by a being that has a soul. So these two beings that Allah was speaking to existed before creation. Alongside with Allah, they existed outside of creation, before time and space. But what do Muslims always say? They always say that only Allah existed outside of creation. But they can no longer say that. And this is not me making anything up. This is coming from their own Quran. This is not a hadith. This is a Quran. Straight from the mouth of Allah. These are the words of Allah, according to Muslims, right? Now, what does this also show? That these two beings that Allah was speaking to, they had understanding. They was given a choice. They were having a conversation with Allah. Okay? So this smoke has a soul. This formless earth, it had a soul. So what else does this suggest? This also shows that the first beings to ever exist with a soul was not Adam. It wasn't even the angels or the jinn. It was these two beings that he is speaking to in 41:11. They had the ability to make decisions, and they understood obedience. They said it themselves. We come willingly, we come obedient. They said it themselves. You see it right before you. I got 3 different translations right before you. Now the question is, another thing that Muslims say, they try to condemn Christians for believing that God had a son. And they like to throw this verse in your face where they say, the Quran says that Allah begets, nor is he begotten. They like to throw that in your face, right? But this is the thing. These two beings that Allah is speaking to, the question to Muslims is, if you say that Allah does not have a son or a daughter, then who are these two beings? Because the Quran does not even tell you that Allah created these beings. It's telling you that he spoke to these beings and they came together and then creation came about. It doesn't tell you that he created the smoke. It doesn't tell you that he created this formless earth. These two beings, they always existed outside of creation, before creation with Allah. And they had eternal knowledge like Allah. Because this is the first time that Allah ever spoke to these beings. This was the first time he ever spoke to these beings. So the question is, how did these beings know the eternal speech of Allah? If it was their first time ever hearing the eternal speech of Allah. How did these beings know the eternal speech of Allah if it was the first time they ever heard the eternal speech of Allah? Muslims? Now, that proves that these beings had some kind of eternal knowledge, just like Allah. Don't you Muslims say that the Quran is written in Arabic? This divine heavenly Arabic? So obviously these beings knew the speech of Allah just like he did. So the question is, now if you say that they didn't have eternal knowledge, you're still in a dilemma. Because some Muslim will say, you will have to agree that I made a good point. So to get out of the dilemma, you will say that these beings did not have an eternal knowledge of the speech of Allah. So how, if you say that, you're still in a dilemma. Because if they didn't have the eternal speech already of Allah, then where did they get it from? Who taught them? And if you say that Allah taught them, then you are saying that Allah has not existed by himself before creation. Because obviously, if you're saying that they learned this eternal speech from Allah, he was the one who taught them this speech. How else would they know how to answer Allah? So this is a very damaging thing to what Muslims always say. They always tell us that Allah don't have no sons. He begets not, or neither is he begotten. He existed all alone by himself outside of creation. There is nothing in the universe like Allah, but they can't say that anymore because now we have the smoke that also existed outside of creation with Allah. We have this formless earth. We have this formless earth that also existed outside of creation with Allah. And not only did they exist outside of creation with Allah, they also had the eternal speech of Allah, the understanding of it. They had an understanding of obedience and willingness. They instantly responded. So now the question is, Muslims, who or what is the father and mother of these two soul beings? Who is the father and mother of these two soul beings? Is it Allah? Or did they just exist alongside with Allah for all eternity? Because you Muslims, you also say that the Quran is separate from Allah, uncreated, the uncreated words of Allah. So are these two soul beings also uncreated? Because again, the Quran gives no mentioning of this smoke ever being created or this formless earth ever being created. Because again, 41:11 is talking about the creation of the heavens. So this was before creation. This was before time and space. So what you have going on right now is the same thing that Muslims accuse Christians of believing in, which is a trinity. You have Allah existing before time and space, communicating with two souled beings. So since this is before time and space, where did these two beings exist at? Where was this smoke and where was this formless earth? Remember, this is before time and space. So if there is no time and space, where could they fit? The only place they could fit is within the only thing that existed before time and space. And that thing is what? According to Muslims, it would be Allah. So this means Allah was speaking to the smoke and the formless earth within his own consciousness. So what is that? That is a trinity. That is Allah, just like in the Christian doctrine. You have God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit communicating with themselves, even before creation. And the Bible shows you that even before creation, you have God communicating within the Godhead. So right here in Surah 41:11, you have Allah doing the exact same thing. So already we have covered two traits that these two soul beings have that's just like Allah. But I'm not done. There is another trait that they share, just like Allah. You know how Muslims tell you that Allah, he is not like anything in creation. He's not a spirit. He is not matter. He is not energy. And the number one thing they say, he is not a gender. He is neither male nor female. Aha. Now, Muslims, you have to say to yourself, what is the gender of these two beings that Allah was speaking to in Surah 41:11? What was the gender of this smoke? What was the gender of this formless earth? What was the gender? So again, that is another trait that this smoke and that this formless earth shares with Allah. So this is contradiction after contradiction after contradiction. So in reality, the first Muslims to exist was not Adam. It was not the angels. It was not the jinn. The first Muslims who submitted was this soul being smoke and this formless soul being earth. And we already proved why they had souls, because only a soul understands obedience and willingness. Those are things that are regulated by a soul to understand. Inanimate objects don't understand morality. Inanimate objects has no grasp of obedience. Get where I'm coming from? So this verse is very damaging to everything that Islam is about. It actually destroys Islam, because no longer can Muslims say that Allah existed alone by himself before the time of creation. That's done. No longer can they say to Christians that the Trinity is some cuckoo, bizarre concept, 3 in 1. Because again, this conversation was taking place before time and space. So if it's taking place before time and space, where else could it exist other than within Allah himself? Another thing that catches my attention in this verse, if you look at the Pictal translation, you will see where it says, "Then turned he to the heaven when it was smoke, and said unto it and unto the earth." Don't Muslims tell you all the time that Allah does not have a body. Even though some of them will come out and just admit, yes, Allah does have a body. But for those who don't admit it, then why would it say that Allah turned? If you don't have a body, you don't have anything to turn. And if Allah is all-seeing, why would you have to turn? You see how this verse is just breaking Islam down to nothing? And even if you go to the Sahih translation, they say he directed himself. Why would you have to direct yourself if you got 360 view of everything around you? That's like me having a camera that has a 360 lens that can see everything around me. Why do I have to turn my attention somewhere as if I was turned somewhere else and couldn't see what was behind me? You see, this verse is destroying Islam. It's destroying the claim that all Allah has to do is say be and something is done. Because if you look into the verse, he gave these soul beings an option. He gave them two choices, willingly or by compulsion. So that leaves the door open to suggest that what if these beings didn't want to come? Muslims say that Allah is all powerful, but in this verse, we see that we don't see him being all powerful in creation. We see him asking something to do something. An all powerful being would show that he is powerful from the onset. He would show that he is all powerful from the onset. That's why Muhammad made a big mistake. See, what he did is Muhammad heard the Jewish scriptures. He read the Torah. He knew about it. But what he did is he remixed the stories that he read, or he forgot certain parts of the story. You see? Had he just stuck with the truth instead of trying to make up this false religion, he would have gotten it right. Because when you read the Bible, you don't find God asking anything to do something before creation. He just spoke it into existence. This is powerful. This is powerful. When you read the Bible, you have God just speaking. He said, "Let there be light." And there was light. He said, "Let the firmament separate," and the dry land appeared. Something like that. But when you read in the book of Genesis, you heard God speaking and commanding. He didn't ask. He didn't give no two options. So from the start of the Quran, in this creation story, is already showing a God that's not all powerful. He's asking things. Okay, are you going to come or you're not going to come? What if the story went like this? When he spoke to the smoke said, "No, Allah, I'm not going to come." Then what? What would have happened? We probably wouldn't even be here today. We don't know if Allah was more powerful than this smoke, because from reading this story, you see that this smoke always existed. It had eternal knowledge. It understood the same eternal speech as Allah. So the Muslim has to say, where did this smoke get the knowledge of this eternal speech? And that's a dilemma, because if you say Allah taught it to the smoke, then you are admitting that Allah did not exist alone by himself before creation. So either way you look at it, it hurts you. Because if you say he didn't speak to the smoke before the creation, then you are saying that the smoke always knew the eternal speech of Allah. This verse has destroyed Islam. It destroys Islam. It's over. It's over. Now, I know what Muslims will probably do next. They'll probably say, this is a metaphor. I know how they do. Or they're going to use the famous quote, Allah knows best. They're going to try something. And most Muslims have probably been reading this verse their entire life and never noticed this huge blunder. This is a huge mistake. Well, not a mistake. I believe that God Almighty allowed this to happen. And the Quran itself says that if you find many contradictions in it, then it cannot be from God. And that's what I'm doing. I'm stepping up to the challenge that Allah himself made. That's right, Muslims. I am challenging your Allah. And I'm not done. We just getting started. This verse is also in contradiction to another verse in the Quran. Because in another passage, it has Allah telling the heavens and the earth to separate. And in this passage, it's saying to the heavens and the earth to come together. So that's a contradiction. In one passage, it's saying that the heavens and earth is telling the heavens and earth to separate. And in this passage, it's telling the heavens and the earth and the smoke to come together. And I know what Muslims will say. They will, and a lot of times Muslims say that, they try to say that the Big Bang Theory proves that Islam is correct. Huh? The Big Bang is a theory. Because I already know where they about to go. They're going to say that this smoke and this formless earth is talking about earth, the heavens and the universe in a nebulous state. But they can't say that. You know why they can't say that? Because nowhere does it say that a nebulous state came together, nor does it say that a God asked the nebulous state a question and it said, yes, God, I come in willing obedience. So they can't even use that. And besides, that's a dumb argument anyway, because see, Muslims are so desperate that they have to resort to an atheist belief called the Big Bang Theory to try and prove their religion, because their religion is weak. It can't stand alone by itself. The Quran cannot stand alone by itself. It's a very weak religion. It needs the support of other religions around it. Muhammad, he needed the support of the Jews and the Christians. He tried desperately for so many years to get them to co-sign him being a prophet. He went so far as to say, you will find his name written in the Torah. And I still haven't seen his name written in the Torah. So that's another lie. So all I'm doing is just stepping up to the plate and using and stepping up to the challenge that Allah gave using his very words. That's all I'm doing. And while I'm doing it, I'm just sitting back and I'm just watching Islam just crumble. So Muslims, you have to ask yourself, why do you have a smoke with consciousness and a earth with consciousness existing before the time of creation right alongside with your Allah? This is very damaging. And why did your Allah ask? Why is he asking instead of commanding, like when you read the Bible? So which God is showing more power and more command? Even from the beginning of time, we see the God of the Bible, Yahweh, showing that he is God. You don't see him asking. How would God look in the Bible asking something to do something? Okay, clouds, will you allow me to create you? Well, this is exactly what we have Allah doing. But Muslims will swear up and down that he is the most powerful. But this is not what this verse is showing. So this creation story does not prove that Allah is all powerful, because even in his creation story, he didn't do it really by his command. He did it by asking something. That's not showing supreme authority. That's like a child's parent saying, hey, little Johnny, do you want to do your homework tonight? Or this right here. No, little Johnny, you're about to do your homework. What we have Allah doing is saying, hey, little Johnny, do you want to do your homework tonight? And giving Johnny options. Yes. Johnny, check box A for yes. Do you want to do your homework? Or check box B, little Johnny, for if you don't want to do your homework. Busted. It's busted. It's all down the drain. And we're not done. We're not done. We're just getting started. You see, another thing you'll find about this Islam, they use words that corrupt everything that Allah is about. Everything that they say Allah is about, I'm going to show you how they use words that corrupts everything that they say Allah is about. And in turn, these words that they use are corrupted based upon the definitions that these Muslims give Allah. And I'm going to tell you why. Referring back to the verse. And I'm not even a apologist or anything like that. I'm just a person who uses my logic. But read the verse. It says, then turn he. Now, what do Muslims tell you? They say that Allah is not a gender. So if he is not a gender, why are you referring to Allah as he? When you refer to Allah as a he, you have destroyed the meaning of the word he. You are confusing the reader, Allah. Because you are using the word he, but Allah is not a he. So when a person hears the word he, what happens is they immediately start thinking about a masculine. Because he is a word that refers to a masculine gender. So why is Allah choosing the word he, a masculine? It makes no sense. It makes no sense. They say that Allah is not like anything inside of creation. And if that's the case, then why did Allah decide to write about himself with words that are found within creation? Did y'all catch that? Because listen, if he is not like anything in creation, then why is he using words that was meant for everything in creation? Because every word, whether Arabic or English or Chinese, Swahili, any language, Hindi, any language that you can think of, the words within that language were created for usage for things that are tangible. Things that we can taste, touch, hear, see, smell, and experience within creation. Right? Correct? Am I right? Apple. We have the word apple because we can see an apple. We can touch an apple. We can bite into an apple. We can experience an apple. Banana. Yellow. Banana. We can say the word banana. We can touch a banana. We can say a banana is yellow. We can see the color of the banana. But with Allah, he is outside of everything. Remember, Muslims? He is outside of creation. He is outside of everything that's tangible. He is inconceivable and incomprehensible. That's what you tell us. So why are you using words that were designed for things that are conceivable and comprehensible? So that means that every word that's in the Quran that's directed to Allah, it falls short. Because no word that we have was created for anything that exists outside of creation. Your day-to-day communication is about things that's within creation. So that's proof that our words is about the things that's within creation. So that means all of these 99 titles that they give Allah and all of that, it don't mean anything, because all of the words that they are using were created for things within creation. So if you are calling Allah truth, then it doesn't fit him, because the truth that we use is for things in creation, not for something outside of creation. So to apply truth to Allah, using the word that we use for truth, you are actually bringing Allah into creation. You are bringing him down by even speaking these words about him, by even applying words like he to Allah. And not only that, you confuse the reader. You confuse the reader because you're telling the reader that Allah is a he. And then you'll tell him that he is not a gender. It doesn't make any sense. So that means the entire Quran, it falls short. It completely fails. You know what Muslims should do? They should figure out a list of words that apply to things that exist outside of existence. Because every word that we use is for things within existence. So what Muslims need to do, they need to compile a book that exists, that has words made for whatever exists outside of existence. You see how dumb that even sounds? That's because all of Islam is foolish. It makes absolutely no sense. But when you read the Bible, it makes perfect sense. And the Bible tells us that God is a spirit. He dwells amongst us. He dwells inside of us. So when we speak about God, the words that when we speak about Yahweh, the words that we use for Yahweh, it doesn't fall short, because he enters into his creation. He enters into those who worship him. He is connected to the people who follow him and worship him. But for a Muslim, they are disconnected from their God. Let me give you an example. A Muslim is like a child in the womb of the mother, but has no umbilical cord. So they don't have any connection with the source, the creation, because our spirit is the umbilical cord that connects us to God. But in Islam, Allah does not have a spirit. So Muslims are disconnected. They just like astronauts lost in space that got disconnected from their safety cord, and they just floating off into space with no connection to anything. They just floating around in space. That's what it's like being a Muslim. It's a very sad existence. They just float around in space, worshiping a God that they don't even know what it is that they are worshiping. If you ask a Muslim, what is Allah? They can't even tell you what Allah is. They can't even tell you. So they beat around the bush. Since Allah is outside of creation, he can't even fit into the imagination of a Muslim, Because even your imagination is inside of creation. According to them, Allah created you. He created your imagination. So if he created you and your imagination, that means he can't even fit in your imagination. So a Muslim can't even ponder about Allah. He can't even think about Allah. Because everything about Allah is outside of creation. So where is Allah? If he's not even in your imagination as a Muslim, you can't even think about him. So Muslims don't have a God. They don't even have a God. Only thing a Muslim have, they have a sound that they make. So the pronunciation of Allah, that's the only thing that Muslims have. They just have a vowel sound. Other than that, they don't have anything. They just have this sound, Allah. He can't go into their imagination because he can't enter into creation. Only thing they have is this right here, Allah. They just got a sound. La 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 la. That's all they have. It's a very sad existence. It's a very sad existence. They don't even have a God. Something else I was going to say. I guess Allah stole it from me. It's another vital point I was about to drive home. Hopefully it'll come back to me. If it doesn't, I'll do a part 2. But that's pretty much what I wanted to say. Like, these Muslims are lost, man. And it's so clear, like right in front of their face. Like, there's nothing they can say about what I just showed. Like, Sura 41:11, it's like the nail in the coffin, man. There's no way around this. But, you know, it's another point I wanted to make. Allah, give me that point back. You stole that point from me. Allah stole the point from me. It's another point that I wanted to make, but guess I'll have to pick up on it next time. I just want y'all to leave your questions and comments in the comment section. I don't know, this might be the only video I do for this channel, and hopefully it awakens somebody, because it's a lot of people being lost in this Islam, man. Billions of people, man. And it's very sad, man, that you had a man from the 7th century, he could come up with just pure nonsense and just mislead and lead all of these people to hell, man. All these people being led to hell. Every day on the news, you hearing Islamic violence, people dying and blowing themselves up and killing themselves over nothing, over a God that's absolutely nothing. And that's what I wanted to say. Thank you, Spirit. You see, the Spirit can give us things. When we as Christians, when we forget things, the Spirit, he'll give it to us. The Muslim, he doesn't have a spirit, right? He's disconnected from Allah, right? And that's the point I wanted to make. Thank you, Spirit, again. You see, because in the Bible, it says that God will bring back everything to our remembrance. But the Muslim, he doesn't have no spirit dwelling in him. When Jesus ascended back into heaven, when you read the Bible, he sent down the Holy Spirit to dwell in us. And again, I'll go back to what I said. The Muslim is like a child with no umbilical cord. Okay? So when you think about Islam, you can't even say that Islam is a religion that's based in spirituality, because their very God is not a spirit. So Islam is the only religion where the religion itself is not about spirituality, because their very God is not a spirit. But Yahweh is a spirit. He dwells inside of us. The Bible says that Jesus was God in the flesh. The Bible also says that Jesus was the visible form of the invisible God. And when Jesus left, he left us with what? The Holy Spirit to guide us and to comfort us. But in Islam, when Muhammad died, what did he leave you with? After Muhammad died, what happened? You had the apostate wars. You had dissension. You had fighting. You had sectarianism. You had corruption after corruption, all the way up till today. Muhammad left the Islamic world in shambles. It's ruined. And it's sad because the area between Tigris and the Euphrates River, that's the cradle. That's what they call the cradle of civilization. That used to be the epic center of revolution in the world as far as architecture and sciences and the advancement of humanity. It started in the cradle of civilization. They had great societies before Islam. But then when Islam came, all of that just went away. When Muhammad came, the Muslim world became stagnated. And look at it today. Look at Afghanistan, how it was in the 70s, in the 60s. It was just this flourishing place. They had tourism. The women could dress any way they wanted to. Baghdad in the 60s, it was like a tourist place. They had museums. They had swimming pools. It was a nice, lovely place. Now look at it. 2019, wars, Taliban, horrible living conditions. Just look at the Muslim world now. And then look at the change, how it seems like the more a person gets into Islam, the more their society goes into the dirt. The more they get out of Islam, the more their society begins to flourish and prosper. So what does that tell you about Islam? Islam is a deaf religion. It's a blood cult, and it only leads to poverty. That's what Islam does. It kills the intelligence of a man. It takes away the rights of a woman. It takes away your humanity. It leaves you with absolutely nothing except death, poverty, and destruction. And ultimately, Islam will lead you to hell. You know what the letters in Islam stand for? The I stands for incest. The S stands for sex. The L stands for lies. And the M stands for murder. Because that's what Muhammad was all about. And everything he did, he used God as a scapegoat. If he wanted to sleep with a man's wife, he claims that he get a revelation. All of a sudden, he can sleep with your wife. If he want to rob and pillage, all of a sudden he gets a revelation, and now he has the right to rob and pillage. Muhammad had all of the traits of a classic cult leader. He could sleep with any woman he wanted to. He could make special rules for himself. All the other Muslims are only permitted 4 wives, but Muhammad can have as many wives as he wants. He can sleep with his slaves. He can make oaths and he can break oaths. What kind of man was this? But I don't want to go on too long. Hope you liked the video. This may be my first and final video. I don't know. But I'm just going to post it and let it do what it does. Leave your comments and your thoughts in the below the video. And hopefully I awakened somebody. And until we meet again, I'm out.